Welcome to Ultimate Humanity, a program designed to make you the optimal version of yourself. William Somersault wrote a book called The Razor's Edge, and I quote, "The path of salvation is hard, sharp as the razor's edge," end quote. So let me ask you, why is it so difficult, the path of salvation? Why is it so difficult to keep up New Year's resolution or to stay away from yo-yo dieting? There are very particular answers for that. In the next two parts of the program, we're going to cover exactly why is it so hard to stay on what we want to do. Part one is going to be the history of what humanity has done trying to give us a tool to stay the course. It's trying to give us an explanation of why, if we know what is best, always end up doing what is wrong. Why is it so hard to do the right thing? What we know is right. Let's start. Knowing is not the same as doing. As Paul, the Apostle Paul in the Bible said, why if I know what's best, do what is worst? So knowing and doing is a completely different thing, and there seems to be a big gap. But before we go on, let me insist, and I cannot emphasize strong enough, that we cannot need to settle for the norm. We cannot settle for not being able to move freely, for not having enough energy to play with our grandsons, with our kids, and especially to have energy so that we don't have to have an amputated leg on all the disease associated with insulin resistance. We just don't have to do that. I want to emphasize that. Shoot for the moon. If you miss, you will still be among stars. And one of those stars is the optimal version of yourself. So let's start. Let's just go over the history of what humanity has done trying to explain why is it that regardless of what we know, we do something completely different. And I think the first explanation came about the 5th century before Christ with this Greek known Heraclitus. Heraclitus says the logos, meaning the way of nature, is one, yet human beings have diverse opinion, or what they call doxa. Doxa means public opinion. And philosophy, the way they saw it, was a paradoxical knowledge, a knowledge against or different than public opinion. We can have opinion about things, but the right way is not a matter of opinion. Let me give you an example. Why is it so difficult to put a jigsaw puzzle together? Let's say a jigsaw puzzle of 1,000 pieces. Why is it so difficult? From the statistical point of view, which is my field, the reason for that is because there are millions and millions of combinations to put the jigsaw puzzle. But there is just one that puts the jigsaw puzzle together to make the right picture. There is just one way out of a million combinations to do the right thing. And that's why it is so difficult. However, knowing that, it doesn't help us to do the right thing. We can know that it is difficult, like Somer says, but that doesn't help us one bit. Knowing that people have opinions or diverse opinions about the logos, the nature, the way of nature, doesn't help us either. However, all the men couldn't put Humpy Hump together again, Humpy Dumpy together again. Why is that? Because the more you move it, an egg, the more you scramble it, the more chaos you create, the most entropy, the most disorder. You can spend your entire life scrambling the egg and you won't put Humpy Dumpy together again. However, there is a way of doing it. Feed the broken Humpy Dumpy to his mother, and he will lay a perfect egg for you. In other words, there is no human way, there is no technology, there is no algorithm, there is no artificial intelligence that can help you to put an egg together again. But nature does it quite simply. Likewise, the proper human lifestyle, the proper diet, the proper exercise, the proper lifestyle, which by the way, that's what diet means in Greek. Doesn't mean calorie reduction or eat the Mediterranean diet, means lifestyle. And just like there is one way to put a jigsaw puzzle together to make a beautiful picture, there is just one way, the proper way, to achieve optimality, to achieve the optimal version of yourself. So we have Heraclitus telling us that human beings have many, many opinions. And yet the logos is just one. Just like a jigsaw puzzle has one way of doing it. There is many, many opinions. And opinions won't help it. Yes, that we have the right of opinion doesn't mean that we are right. We can have the right for opinions and be completely wrong. Then after Heraclitus, Socrates, about 200 years after this gentleman Heraclitus, Socrates comes and says, the reason people do the wrong thing is because they do not know. Again, the assumption there is that knowing is doing. So for Socrates, the solution was to teach men the right thing. The whole Socratic method of questions and answers, the Mayeutica, was a system designed to get to the right answer, to help you know. However, Socrates came and went, Plato, Aristotle, the Dark Ages, the Renaissance, and still people were doing the wrong thing just as before Heraclitus. But let's make a little pause here. Why was it only 500 years before Christ that the problem was known? Well, because before, you didn't know. You didn't need to know. People just did the right thing. Just like a lion doesn't need to know what a lion needs to do. For a lion, you might say, knowing is doing. However, a lion has his instincts. You might say that that's the way of a lion knowing, just feeling, sensing his instincts. But we have that crazy thing that we call knowing. Just like the movie The Invention of Lying, we can talk about the invention of knowing, where at one point human beings with the Greeks discover knowing. And from then on, chaos set in. Thus, intelligence. When people became to sense this thing called intelligence later on, what did they mean by that? What was it that they sensed? What was it that they discovered that was not there before? Well, intelligence comes from the word intellectia, which means to choose. People knew how to choose. If you do not know what to choose, you're not intelligent. It's the same root as the word elegantia, which also means to choose. The intelligent man, the elegant man, is he who knows how to choose. We are known as Homo sapiens. The very word sapiens comes from sapienza, from sapore, which means flavor. The Homo sapiens is he who knows what to eat. It's he who makes the right choice of food. Are we, the modern men, intelligent, elegant, and sapiens? Seems to be that we do not know what to eat. We need to recover the right way. Those elegantia means to choose, and intelligent means to choose. To choose what? Any arbitrary choice? Of course not. It's to choose the right thing. It's to choose the way a jigsaw puzzle is put together. It might help us to know that choosing is a behavior, it's an action, it's a doing. When we choose the wrong thing, means we behave the wrong thing. There is a very strong concept in psychology that tells us that behavior is not the cause of any evil. Behavior is just one symptom. When you make the wrong choice, doesn't mean that you choose wrong. It strictly means that there's something inside of you that is wrong. That's what behavior tells us. The bad action is telling us that something inside is wrong. Something that creates a gap between knowing and doing. And we need to bridge that gap back. So after Socrates that tell us that the problem was that men didn't know what the good was, came Spinoza, Baruch Spinoza, who talks about the passions. He tries to create a geometry of the so-called passions. St. Augustine calls it the deadly sins, like the movie Seven. We have gluttony, greed, pride, what have you. And he creates a geometry of that. And for him, you can override the effect of the passions by the highest passion. If you prefer, for instance, money to food, gluttony overrides, greed overrides gluttony. So there is a ruling passion. There is the passion that it is the greatest. In trying to solve the problem of knowing and doing, Spinoza called it the intellectual love of God. If you love God, just like in the Bible where Jesus says, the most important commandment is to love God. The second, to love your neighbor. And from there, everything else follows. So if we learn to know how to love God, we're there. But how we do that? What even means the intellectual love of God? Spinoza came and went, and the problem is still with us. After Spinoza, you have the likes of Arthur Schopenhauer and Friedrich Nietzsche. What these two individual German philosophers from German idealism, they told us, Schopenhauer, that there is the will to life, a tyrannic will to life. that tyrannize us. We have no choice but to follow the will to life. And in so doing, he calls into question the idea of free will. We do not know how the decision that we made comes to be. It just pops up into our conscious mind. But all the different drives that are subconscious, we are not aware of them, nor do we decide for them. They choose for us by whatever means. After him, Nietzsche came and said, well, it's not the will to life, it's the will to power. And the will to power is we don't want just to survive at all costs. We want to be more than life. We want to become what he called the Übermensch. What was the Übermensch? The Übermensch for him, you might say, among other things, that it is the man, woman, who controls his emotions, who makes a conscious will, meaning with the frontal lobe. Nowadays, people talk about presence of mind. Something like that is what Friedrich Nietzsche means. Nietzsche came and went, and we have World War I and World War II. Didn't help one bit. And then, after Nietzsche, came a thinker highly influenced by both Nietzsche and Schopenhauer, of a man, Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud took the ball and ran. What ball was that? What Nietzsche and Schopenhauer discovered, the subconscious, that we have subconscious drives. So Freud could finally answer the question of Paul raised in the Bible in Romans, the letter to the Romans. Why, if I know what is best, choose what is worst? Freud had an answer. Because you are subconscious. You are acting on a subconscious level. Thus, Freud tells us, the problem is to bring the subconscious to the conscious. We need to make conscious the subconscious, what he called traumas. We need to remember them. And the moment you begin to remember them, you stop repeating those neurotic patterns, those wrong behaviors, and making the wrong decision. There's nothing wrong with that, other one that it is very, very hard to become conscious of your trauma. And even when you do that, you must still repeat the neurotic pattern. Freud came and went, and from there, we have become with million ways trying to solve that problem and bridge the gap between knowing and doing. We have come up with many, many technologies, many programs, but like Skinner, the father of behaviorism, says, what good is any program if we do not follow it? Somebody that I admire a lot is Bill W., the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous. What he did is amazing. It's mind-boggling. He was able to take spirituality and psychoanalysis and fuse them into a very practical program consisting of 12 steps. If you follow those steps, very practical, you will eventually achieve what William James coined the term spiritual awakening or religious experience, which is nothing but a readjustment of the emotions. What we're trying to do in Optimal Humanity is come up with a very practical program that you can follow, and that it will not be as difficult as a yo-yo diet, that you can achieve the optimal version of yourself. Not to settle with the norm. Not to say, if you're 50 and over, you will be able to push a cart at the grocery store, or you will be able to bend and play with your grandsons or with your kids. We can do much, much better than that. And I am a living proof of that. And I want to share that with you. And I will be doing that on the next chapters of our program. Thank you very much for your patience.